Episode of ArmTalk. I'm your host, Jody Williams. Guess what? I have a very, very special guest today. We all know him as Todzilla. I sat there and gave him a name the other day called Sergeant Side Pressure. I have Todzilla, Todd Hutchins, on the show. Todd, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. I'm very happy to be here.
Well, thanks. I want to thank you for having some time aside so you and I can sit there and chit-chat and all that kind of good stuff. But I want to talk about some of the juicy stuff. I don't want to talk about training and side pressure. You've done enough of that with all the seminars and that kind of stuff. Let's get down to business. You have a super duper match coming up in a couple weeks. No, I think it may be next weekend, correct? Against Corey West.
It's not this weekend. It's next weekend.
Right. So I think, honestly, and I had Corey on the show, but I think you got something to prove to the point where that last match you had with Zolioff, you know, you don't want to end like that. I think you really got something to prove, honestly, and I could be wrong, but, you know, the old saying goes that you're only good as your last match, right? And it felt like that, okay, we all expected the real time. It seemed like Zolioff didn't want to go inside with you, which was probably a good idea for him, but I feel like that this is something that needs to happen. This is more of a challenge for yourself. How do you respond to that? Tell the viewers out there.
Well, you know, Zoliev is a bad man. He's a tough dude. He showed up with a plan, and I showed up with a prayer, and his approach was better.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to pulling Corey. It was talked about. COVID messes up my memory of timeline. I mean, I'm going to say that like there was talk of me and Corey pulling, and I don't know if it was like a year ago or 2 years ago, because this whole COVID thing has like erased 12 pages out of my calendar, so my memory's kind of foggy on this stuff.
Right.
But I think there were still like WAL events going on when I first started hearing talk of me pulling Corey. But then, you know, we met when I went down and visited Michael Todd and his lovely wife there in Arkansas. And then I don't actually know what the impetus of this match was, but Paul Italia just called me up and offered it. And at the time, there was nothing going on. I mean, I really didn't have anything on the horizon. But then all of a sudden, you know, you'd think that I don't know where the WAL is.
No one does.
They have to be so active. But all of a sudden, man, Engen's pulling together big money tournaments. Steel Pickups put together big money tournaments. Local tournaments are sprouting all up again. It was man, I don't know what COVID did, unless it just prevented everybody from planting seeds for a year. Now everybody's gardening. You know what I mean? It's just
right.
Like there was tournaments and matches and freaking John Brzezinski coming back, getting hurt, nothing either, man. All of a sudden now everybody wants to have a tournament and get John in it.
You know what? I tell you what, this COVID thing, it kind of ruined a lot of stuff. But in contrast, it kind of opened doors for a lot of people. And I think Wall did the same thing. And we all, a couple years ago, we all kind of knew, Wall's taking a break. We'll be back better than ever. That's all you heard. But there are no promo videos about when it's returning. So we're all kind of sitting on the sidelines, whether you're an athlete or a fan, kind of going, when's this coming back? When's this coming back? Well, now of a sudden, because Wall kind of just stayed mellow, it opened doors for all these matches that happened that probably would have never happened had, you know, Wall been, you know, alive. So I don't, and who knows? I could be wrong, but are you pulling Zolioff if Wall was around? Are you pulling Corey West if Wall was around? You know, that kind of thing.
I am absolutely not pulling anybody that's not in WAL if the WAL is around. When the WAL is active, I pull the WAL exclusively, you know. But then again, Michael Todd and Devin Lorette aren't pulling each other in Dubai under another league's rules either, you know.
Right, I mean? You know, and it begs to, you know, and I sit there, and before I get into my next topic, it's like I see all these guys that was WAL, like a RVJ, for example, and they go there and they kind of like, okay, we all expect RVJ to kick butt, and it seemed like he was just lethargic at that Arm Wars event, and I'm like going, okay, is it because, was it the flight? Was it the fact that maybe RVJ hadn't pulled a really meaningful match in 2 years? And I sit there and wonder, I made a comment last week on my show, and I sat there and I wasn't picking on Sam Harris, but I sat there and use him as an example that, you know, Sam Harris hasn't done a lot since his WO match. I mean, he's been kind of sitting there going, okay, I'm Sam Harris, but hey, I'm not going to wait for Wall to return. I'm going to go out there and compete, you know?
Yeah, well, and I'll throw myself in this. It's not like we were sitting around waiting for WL to return because there was nothing going on. I mean, when the WA, you know, when COVID hit, and an idea I had heard, I think I heard it from WAL. I don't know where I heard this idea from WL was there was like talk of they could have, and anybody could have done this. I mean, Engen could have done this. Neil Pickup could have done this. I don't know where I heard the idea was. Not every state was locked down. Like Wyoming was not completely freaking locked down.
Oh yeah.
You could have probably grabbed. You probably could have grabbed 8 arm wrestlers, right? Gone to Wyoming for like a week, filmed. I don't know, 8. Let's see if you got 8 people. You could have you could have 7 different events, 7 different super matches, basically. And would that be right? For 7 super matches, allow everybody to pull everybody. I'd have to do the math later.
Right.
But then, well, now you've got 7 or 8 months of television type stuff that you could have all filmed in a week in one closed environment. And if it's one thing COVID's taught a lot of businesses was there's a new way of doing business. There's a lot of tools and technology out there that allows people to do stuff remotely, do stuff at home. And you know what? This might change arm wrestling. You don't really have to have 9 events spread out over 12 months to do a series. You could do 9 or 10 events in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, grab everybody, put them into one big. Do it UFC Ultimate Fighter style. Throw them all in a. I mean, I don't want to live in a house with a bunch of arm wrestlers. Don't get me wrong. I mean, given the choice to stay with arm wrestlers or by myself, I'm staying by myself.
Right.
But you very well could have over a week's time. You could film 3 events a day. You could do a morning, afternoon, evening thing. You wouldn't even have to bring all the arm wrestlers out at once. Let's say you had 12 or 14 arm wrestlers. You bring the first 8 out for the first 2 or 3 days, and the next 8 out for the last 2 or 3 days. And then maybe you bring the winners back. You could do a whole year's arm wrestling like competition event in a couple of weeks, and then just dole it out over the year. You know? Yeah.
You know, and it's awesome like that. And you know, to sit there and go, okay. I mean, heck, you were there in Idaho, you know, last December, and you saw all the array of talent that was there in Idaho. And, you know, it was like, hey, I mean, Jeff Frank made it happen, you know, with the help of Robbie Topian and the rest. And that was an awesome event, you know, and it goes to show you that, you know what, even with all this pandemic going on, you can still put on a show. It doesn't have to be in a convention center or, you know, anything like that, or expo center. You can have it in some middle town of nowhere. Everybody will come, we'll have a good old time, and we'll go from there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always thought arm wrestling worked better in the little towns, little venues than it did in the big coliseum. For some reason, arm wrestling in those great big coliseums and auditoriums and stuff just never actually felt right. I mean, arm wrestling's more of an intimate sport. So for me, I mean, if I had my own league, and I don't, and I won't, and I never will, but not only would I put it in little events, I'd let the audience go up there and stand right next to the tape. You know, I'd probably have I guess the super heavyweight, they probably are at a 40 or an 80 inch. So, I mean, you could put like a 24-inch radius around the table and let the audience get as close as that. You know, as long as a ref can walk all the way around the table, let the audience go up and let the audience get in there and scream at people and stuff and make it intimate, make it close, and make it, you know, like where it came from.
Can you imagine that?
Trying to make wrestling UFC or something like that, it never made sense to me. But then again, I've never run a league and I've never put on a successful event, and I don't know doodly squat about any of that. All I know is I see a lot of people trying to fill on, and they do in Europe. Don't get me wrong. You go to an arm wrestling event in Europe, they hold it in the indoor track and field building of a college or a convention center, and they fill it. They fill the seats. they put arm wrestling on a stage, and they put the big concert TV screens up and stuff. In Europe, arm wrestling has a completely different feel. Count that when RBJ goes overseas for the first time in his life, and everything looks different and everything feels different, and especially over there where the cars are on the wrong side of the road and everybody speaks funny, but I think in America, I think arm wrestling belongs in bars like billiards and bowling and that kind of stuff. But
right.
over in Europe, it's a stadium event overseas, not just Europe, but in Russia. And Russia will fill a stadium for an arm wrestling event. And the Zloty, when Igor puts that on, there's security and stuff. It's like it's like boxing almost. It's like boxing here. You know what I mean?
And I'm glad you brought that point up, because that segue is going to go into my next topic. And before we got on live, I asked you a question.
Well, if you want, Jody, I could just run the whole interview myself, and you could go get a sandwich.
I ran out of Miller Lite too, though. What do you think the reason is when you have the East versus West? You got the guys from North America against the guys from Europe or what have you. Why do you think we're struggling as of now?
Well, it's East versus West is the United States versus every country that's not the United States.
Pretty much.
Kind of that's not really. It's not like it's the United States versus Bulgaria, which would be one country, right? But if it's the United States versus everybody who's not the United States, that's not bad. I don't know if it's really not fair, because the United States still has the advantage in that. But then again, it's not like we are picking the dream team out of the NBA to go to the Olympics either, right?
Right.
They're out there, they're reaching out, they're putting matches together. A lot of this stuff is they're reaching for people who aren't under contracts, so they're not obligated to the WAL or Igor stuff. And it's just starting out. It's East versus West, but I think that's more of a coincidence than the actual point.
Right.
I think look, Ingen's a hardworking, industrious, ambitious man. I think it will be East versus West in the first year, in a few years, and then I think you will see, America putting forth their best, and all these other countries putting forth their best. But right now, it's really, it has more of a local tournament feel. It's just that since Engen's in Turkey and he knows everybody, Engen's idea for local tournament is whoever answers the phone in any country of the world, But then other than that, let's see, Engen's only had one, right? Joshua Augustin Grant won his match.
Yeah, that's true. He did win his.
Hers lost, but Sarah dominated hers, and I don't even know where do you put Sarah, in East or West? We claim her as American,
right?
But she's famous for being not American. You know what I mean?
Right. And it's just the battle lines are drawn where the Atlantic Ocean is the middle. So what side of the Atlantic Ocean do you live on? On the west side or the east side? So I think that's
where do you put Engen in that? Because Engen defaulted on his because he got injured. So
true. Sarah
won hers, Joshua won his, me and Herman lost, and then you got Engen. So who won? Did the East or the West win that tournament?
That's a good question. And if you want to go,
if the West did bad because I lost, I apologize. But I'm just saying, I'm not so sure that that portends the future of it. Now, if John goes over there and kicks everybody's ass, does that mean the West would know better because one guy did?
Well, I'll tell you what, two things. If you were to elaborate on that and say, okay, let's just say you add North America. So now you add Canada. Uncle John didn't do good. Ryan Espy got hurt. And it's like, okay, here we go again, but.
Oh, okay. So, now there, that's right. I was only speaking relative to Engen's tournament, but Neil Pickup's tournament. So tell me go through. I only watched the RVJ match on Arm Wars. What else happened there? Ryan SB got hurt.
Yeah, so SB got hurt in the first match.
Injured is losing. So if SB got hurt, is that the same as losing? Like Engen got hurt, or is that just like a draw?
Well, he pulled both arms because he pulled right-handed with Kardeka. He got hurt, and after match number 2, he did some damage to his inner elbow, but he also had to pull left-handed. Then of course RVJ lose out of Canada. He lost 6-0. So I sit there and go, North America, we got to get on. We got to dig deep. And then England's like, okay, it's time to bring the big dogs. It's time to bring Todzilla, Michael Todd, Chance Shaw, John Brazilian, because now all of a sudden we're going to roll out this mat and we're going to go, okay. And there might be more people on the card coming up, maybe not, but. When you put that out there, it's like, okay, we got to redeem ourselves as I guess you could say Americans. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I see that. So if we're going to bill it as East, and I'll gladly answer your questions, but if we're going to bill it as East versus West, is each side putting up their best people, or is it just considered East versus West just because we call random people on either side?
I think it's just random, just because of the fact that what side of the Atlantic Ocean you live on.
No, what I meant is, if we're going to do East, so in the upcoming match, we'll take John out of it because he's a special case.
Right.
Okay. So who else have we got coming up on the next match? What I'm saying is it's not like it's not like North America, which, okay, let's include North American. It's not like there's a representative on our side. Let's say we nominate Jody as the ambassador to the East versus West Commission.
Right.
It's not like you sit down and go through the rankings and say, okay, here's the West's number 1 super heavyweight 225. It's not like we're vying for it and having qualifying matches or anything. We're just calling people we're just lining people up who answer the phone. I don't know if Neil Pickup still does this, but his trademark for Arm Wars wasn't so much trying to determine the best in any weight class.
Right.
He was kind of like picking and choosing matches that he thought would make for very entertaining matches. So he was like trying to generate like long matches. So Neil would match people up across weight classes and stuff.
Gotcha.
If he thought the styles and the strengths lined up. So if that's what you're doing, so if you're trying to build entertaining viewer videos and not an actual progression to the best, that's not really producer versus market research. And I don't actually know what Engen's doing. And you'd have to ask him. I'm not speaking for him.
Right.
But he's got a pretty good finger on the pulse of the arm wrestling community. And I think Engen is actually trying to answer who's best.
Yeah.
But I don't think he's trying to answer who's best East versus West. I think he's just trying to answer who's best in the world. So he grabs arm wrestlers in a relative way. His weight classes are they've been flexible for me. I don't know if they're flexible for everybody, but he goes, want to pull this guy. He gives me competitors and weight classes. And to be honest, I say, okay, I'll do this guy at that weight. And it doesn't stop there. He'll still offer me options. I mean, Engen is very accommodating in this, but I don't get the feeling he's trying to determine. I don't get the feeling he's trying to determine that, like, the communist countries are better than the capitalist countries. I think he just says, my 10,000 Facebook fans are really confused at who's the best outside puller at 175 pounds in the world. So
right.
He's going to go grab people from whatever weight class and put that together. So it's almost like Engen is the, what was that show? Total Request Live or something. It's like Engen takes requests,
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he's that, because there's not like returning champions or anything in Engen's events. There's
right.
just two bad dudes, and Engen will match people up at skill level and like weight class and age. fluctuate. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like a true match. I mean, it's like what iHeartRadio tries to do with my radio selections, except Enkin's good at it. iHeartRadio fucking sucks at their.
Well,
I swear, I hate iHeartRadio. I hate it so bad. I mean, I listen to it like 12 hours a day.
right.
I hate it when my favorite streaming station sucks, but I really hate iHeartRadio.
Well, Big Tony Thomason told you, he said, hey, what's up? And good luck on your match coming up with Mr. Corey West.
I like Tony. I know him well. You know, I first started pulling him in my brother's garage in Colorado. And I went to Derek Smith's practice a few years ago, and I saw him again sober. And I go, holy smokes, you're big. I do not remember you being this big in Colorado. That is a lot of man right there.
And, you know, and I'm glad all these guys are like, it seems like we got more pullers now than we did when I first got into it in 2011. Because now I'm glad that guys like Tony Thomason, I think he has a match coming up with Cody Merritt sometime soon. You know, Chance Shaw was on his YouTube channel earlier today, and he's on the card with you and John and Michael Todd and stuff on Egan's tournament coming up. So I'm glad everybody's getting these opportunities. It seems like John's taking everybody on. I'm going to pull Chance Shaw, then Dimitri, then Paul Lynn. And it seemed like John's just taking on the world right now, which I kind of like, because now the newer arm wrestlers who don't know anything about John except for stories, now they can actually see him in person. And I think that's pretty cool too, you know?
John has always been a benefit to us. And yeah, he's just great. It's an honor knowing him, and it's an honor seeing him around. And it's good to see him coming back.
Yeah, and just so you know, Ty, I mean, you're up there too, because now, you know, one of these days I'm gonna have to go. Are you still in Ohio?
I'm in Ohio right now.
Maybe one of these days I might have to go up there and, you know, come to your house and pull with you, and all of a sudden you can grip the back of my head and yell at me about pick up the fucking beer and all that kind of stuff, you know, because
you come by anytime you want. I'm here almost every night, and if I'm not here, the neighbors know where to find me.
There you go. I mean, hey, as long as you got some
all the time. I got people stopping by the house every other month or so, it seems.
Well, as long as you got the barbecue chicken wings.
People who just show up out of the blue is kind of odd, because, you know, I don't know if they're showing up to, you know, because I owe them money, or they're showing up to give me money. I don't know what they're doing. So there's always that weird moment when, you know, when somebody I don't recognize pulls into the driveway. But yeah, come by anytime.
Nice. So you got Big Corey, and I'm talking about, like, when you pull Corey, I understand, you know, when you guys were getting Michael ready for Devin, and you and Don Underwood and Corey were back at the Monster Factory training and stuff. I know you guys locked up at some point, not knowing that, hey, this is going to be a match down the road.
No. When I locked up with Corey, I already knew there was going to be a match between me and him down the road, because it had been talked about either 1 or 2 years ahead of time. Right. We were there to help Michael. Now the only issue was Corey had been injured, in Idaho. So, I mean, he wasn't back full blast. Plus, I think he either had a cold, or he had COVID, or he had SARS, or he had bird flu. I mean, I don't know. He was not a healthy fire-breathing. The Corey I pulled was not the healthy fire-breathing Corey that's in Rebecca's videos. Right. You know what I mean? The guy I pulled wasn't benching no 550 pounds. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. So how does a guy? And I always wondered, because I'm 5'11", and when I see you pull guys,
I'm 5'11".
Okay, well then, you know, because there's times I have to get on my tippy toes, but it's not too bad to where I need a riser. But you know, I feel like to get where I need to be at, I got to be on my tiptoes, which is fine. So when you pull the likes of these big guys like Jerry Cataract, and now you're pulling, you know, a guy like, you know, Corey West, you know, how do you get comfortable at the table when you got guys that massive?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on my tippy toes too to start with, and it's I don't know, that riser's odd, because I think if you're somewhere between 5'9", 5'10", if you're somewhere between 5'9" and 6 foot,
right.
you know, that's kind of a weird gray area for the riser. I've tried risers before, and it allowed me to get my shoulder closer to my hand, but it didn't allow me, and it did allow me to reach further across center, but it really hindered my ability to go backwards.
Right.
You know what I mean? But, so yeah, I never used a riser. But to be honest, as uncomfortable as we are at 5'11", pulling somebody, say, who's 6'3" or 6'4", it's uncomfortable for them too, because they got to lower their hand a lot because our arms are shorter.
Right.
You know, and then again, now if you're, you know, if you're 200 and some pounds and 5'11", you've probably got somewhere between a 34 and a 36-inch waist. But if you're 400 and some pounds and you got a 40-inch waist, you don't get your hips up as close to that table as you want anyways, you know. So riser or no, you know, in order to get your shoulder next to your hand, you're like leaning forward,
right,
where you and I can get our shoulders next to our hand and we can arch our back. You know what I'm saying? We can keep our chin up and get the shoulders next to our hand. But somebody that's carrying that bowler body style, you know, they're almost chin down trying to get their shoulder next to their hand. So there's trade-offs each way. But don't get me wrong, if I had a choice between being 226 pounds and 426 pounds, I would take the bad posture and go into a match at 426 pounds.
Gotcha.
But it's just not cut. You know, there's more things than just weight that factor into this thing.
So here's an offbeat question, because you've been around like the United States as far as residence. Where was the best place you lived in? Because you've been all over. You know what I mean?
There's two.
Okay.
First, I was born in Minnesota and I grew up in Michigan. I grew up in southwestern Michigan. That's where I met my wife. That's where, and we were married for a long time. I went to school in northern Michigan. My college in northern Michigan is further north than like 80% of the population of Canada. That's how far north Michigan reaches. And I'll be honest, I thought I was going to live in Michigan my entire life. I mean, there's a lot of water there. There's a lot of, the Detroit's there, the UP's there. I thought I was going to live there my whole life. Then, I lived in a couple of other states. But I moved to South Carolina. That first opened my eyes that, you know what? Your hometown isn't necessarily your destiny. So I loved South Carolina. There's the foothills of the Smoky Mountains there. The ocean was there. And where we lived, we were a couple of hours from the ocean or a couple of hours from the mountains. And then if we wanted to go to Georgia or Florida or something like that, that's still a drive. So
right.
I mean, there's a lot of heat and humidity there, don't get me wrong, but the food was wonderful. But the way they speak, took a year or two to get used to. So I go, you know what? I could live here the rest of my life. This is absolutely beautiful. And then, that really what turned my arm wrestling career on also. So it's cool being in a beautiful place and then just being strong as fuck, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But then I moved to Utah, and I go, holy smokes, this place is beautiful, too. I like the Red Rock portion of Utah. I like the mountains. The snow in Utah is unlike the snow in Michigan because there's no humidity there.
Right.
You can clear your driveway with a leaf blower. In Michigan, we got specially built shovels just for snow.
Wow.
In Utah, you just brush the stuff off. So I said, you know what? I could live in Utah the rest of my life. This place is absolutely beautiful. But so right now, my two favorite places have been South Carolina and Utah. But there's a lot of parts of this country I haven't given a shot yet. And there's parts of Europe. I really liked Bulgaria when I was there. Bulgaria kind of reminded me of Kentucky, if Kentucky was on the Pacific Ocean. Right. So I might like Bulgaria, but I'm not going to live in a foreign country. But Idaho and Montana, they look striking to me. I lived in Arizona for a while. Arizona was unique. That heat was something else. But that desert scenery with those cactuses that look like people, and the sunsets and stuff. I mean, those. I think I like Michigan more than I liked Arizona,
Right.
but Utah and South Carolina are tied for first, and Michigan and Arizona are tied for second, and those are 4 incredibly diverse states.
There you go.
People who live in America really have no idea how blessed and lucky we are that you can go to. I mean, for a couple $100, you can go to Arizona, Utah, northern Minnesota, northern Michigan, South Carolina, Florida, Alabama. I mean, you could do all of those on one trip if you wanted in a couple of weeks. And there's a lot of countries where you would have to leave the entire country several times to experience that diversity. So we are truly blessed in America just to be afforded all of that just beauty, And it's amazing what a country we have.
And another reason why I want to ask that, because it's almost like, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seemed like you had 2 different careers in arm wrestling. What I mean by that is that you had the luxury of training with 2 awesome groups. We all know about Utah. You got John, Bob Brown, Baxter, Seal, Cody Merritt, Justin Green, and all the boys in Utah. But a lot of people, take us back to South Carolina. Fritz Corey, Chad Silvers, and all the guys down there. It seemed like you were real fortunate to have 2 training groups that made you who you are today. Elaborate on that.
And 2 completely different training groups.
Yeah.
And actually, I've had 3 careers in arm wrestling.
Okay.
Because I started in Michigan and I'm back in Ohio. So the 3rd phase was actually in 2 parts. It was just interrupted by the South Carolina and the Utah part.
Gotcha.
But in Utah, it was a very Utah was when I first got exposed to what appears to be the prevalent training style in America at practice. And it's the get a grip, start slow, grind it out, work it out, that kind of style of practice. South Carolina, their practices were like scrimmages.
Okay.
I mean, you pulled under legit strict rules. Like, if you and I are in South Carolina practicing and you and I walk up to a table, we get somebody else to be head ref. Okay? You don't get your sloppy, comfortable, perfect grip, and I don't get my sloppy carved in, shoulder rolled in stuff. We start square, we start even, and we go when the ref says go. Now, whether the ref says ready go or no moving go, that varies depending on whatever the prevalent league is.
Gotcha.
But South Carolina, if you could we really need to develop a unified theory of arm wrestling training, because there's so much out there as far as practicing and weight training and stuff that just needs to be freaking put together so we can all contribute. But South Carolina approached it, like I said, like scrimmages.
Gotcha.
But they weren't necessarily militant in the volume you pulled. Now, I pulled Harold Owens at a practice in either Indiana or Illinois. I can't remember. I pulled in so many different states. And I was pulling him towards the end of practice, and he goes, I've already pulled 100 times. I will pull you, but normally I quit at 100. I go, he counts. I never thought of that. You know what I'm saying? So there's weird. Another philosophy of practicing where he says, I pulled 100 times. I go, dude, man, I've had like 100 beers. How do you even count matches? But in Utah, it was more power bait. People would, you start with your comfortable, friendly grip. You're not cheating anybody else. You go, somebody decides when to go, except John. John is the consummate professional arm wrestler. John comes to practice with like zero ego. Everybody who practices with John goes home thinking they can beat John, because John puts you where you're the strongest.
Right.
He gets to where he feels weak and he works it. And when he loses a couple of times, he sits down doesn't cuss, doesn't bitch, doesn't whine or nothing. He just sits down for a bit, comes back up to the table, and he'll do that, all night long. Where, when I get on the table and I get rolling, I want to stay there until I'm like out of gas, and then I'm done. John practices like he's in a tournament, pulls for a while, stops while everybody gives speeches, pulls for a while, stops while the refs have to go have lunch, and we got to change the tables from right to left and all that, And he just works on stuff, and he works on like everything. He doesn't work on just his pet move, where too many people in practice, they're working their hook, that hook. And it's like, dude, your hook's fine.
Right.
You need to try something else. Whereas South Carolina, you got a more, it forced you to adapt more. Because if your pet move wasn't working that night, you're just getting smashed. And you're getting hit by somebody else's full blast hit. You know what I'm saying? And so it forces you to adapt to tournament style pulling, because it's a legit legal goal, and you don't know what the other guy's doing. Because in South Carolina would have big practices. They'd have 2 or 3 tables. I bet you 24 people at a time was very common. We had people in South Carolina driving from North Carolina, Georgia, Florida a lot of time. I mean, people were driving several hours to come to those South Carolina practices. And this was all, because this was when John Bergeson and them were putting all those tournaments in casinos and stuff. That was like when Pulling John started. So I hit South Carolina at like the zenith, what I thought was the zenith, but then there just kept being more zeniths or more zeniths. What's the plural of zenith?
You got me on that one.
Somebody throw it in the comments. We'll correct it later. But there's been several peaks of arm wrestling. But so anyway, so when I ended up in Utah, and we were practicing Utah style, which was great, especially with John there. You're learning it.
Right.
So then we developed 2 practices a week, which is funny because I love these arguments that crop up about, do you stop weight training for table time? Do you factor table time into your training? Do you, all this formal, we pretend that there's first principle based science methods of training arm wrestling. Right. But in reality, we're all just making shit up and doing what we've always done. So we started running 2 practices in Utah, and one was that traditional long grinding work stuff, which prepared you for, long matches and that comfortable stuff. And then the other one was just basically, you want to hit. And in that practice, we started making like blender drinks and stuff. So then the girlfriends and the wives started showing up. And then it completely changes the dynamic of arm wrestling practice if there's like a bunch of girls there, a bunch of married girls and girlfriends there, and the guys are arm wrestling, So that was a fun, Utah was such a fun time. Oh man, I loved arm wrestling there. And we were traveling all over the world and winning everything. I mean, that was cool too. But
that's the cherry on top right there.
Man, that time in Utah was freaking awesome.
So when you are back in Utah, and let's just say, you and Bob Brown and John Brzezinski, and you guys are getting ready to go to an event over in Europe, whether it be some kind of arm fighter, vendetta, or whatever, or Nemiroff or whatever. Tell everybody how training for a tournament in the States is a little bit different than training for somebody across seas, because the way of style they pull. How different is it?
Well, it's absolutely not different at all for John, because John knows how to train John. So John went to alter his training a bit.
Right.
You know what I mean? And John's been very consistent how he trains. John's one of the few arm wrestlers out there on record who really hasn't changed or reneged or backpedaled anything he's ever said. He's been preaching, because when I first started, John had a Ask John Brzezinski column on the internet. I think Dave DeVoto organized it.
Oh, yeah.
And I printed the whole thing off. I mean, it was hundreds of pages long. I printed the whole thing. I mean, it took a whole ream of paper to print, because he'd been doing it for years. He was answering several questions. And I sorted it into training, tournaments and competition, and then everything else. And the everything else pile I just threw away. That was just people saying, "Oh, John, you're great," or "Oh, John, I met you here." Basically, it was an "Oh, John" pile. I just threw the "Oh, John" pile away. And I kept the training pile and the technique pile.
Right.
And I'll be honest, I could print that out today, and it would be everything John would be currently saying on his YouTube channel. He really hasn't deviated or fluctuated from his philosophy at all. Although he does talk nowadays, he talks more about injuries, rehabbing injuries, and he talks more about, say, I don't know how to put this. I don't know whether it's speed or power or reaction time or something, but it's he speaks more like he has to think and plan harder for his tough matches than he used to, because he used to, like, he'd always have a plan, but he always had so much reserve horsepower in the tank that he could adapt quicker. And he's a lot more thoughtful now in 2021 than he was in 2000 when I printed off his internet papers, you know. But other than that, he's pretty consistent. He could have written a book in 2000 and probably only revised 2 or 3 chapters in 2021, and it would still all apply. I mean, it would basically be like a mathematics textbook, because math ain't changed in the last 200 or 300 years, and I don't think John's philosophy in arm wrestling has either.
Nice. And we've always, at some point in our careers, I know I have, altered some things. Oh, man, I should have done this 2 years ago, or, 2 years down the road. Yeah, I need to change this up. Here's a weird question, and I don't want to be too weird, but, back in the Utah heydays, and, Bill Brzezinski, how often did you pull him? And, was he around in the early days with Bongard and those guys? Did you get a chance to lock up with him a lot?
I pulled Bongard a lot. Me and Bongard were really, really good friends. Bill, I've met Bill a few times. I only pulled Bill once,
right? And
I met him a few times. I met him at a wedding reception. I met him at a cookout type picnic, and then I met him at the tournament I pulled him in. I mean, I was well aware of his reputation and all of that, but this was in 2010 time frame.
Yeah.
So I still was, I guess I was, I don't know what my prime was, but I mean, at 2021, when I look back at 2010, I go, man, I was so stupid on so many things. But I'm well aware of what Bill accomplished and what he could do. But I myself only met him at very limited times.
Because he was a dominant puller for that small window. He got in, and everyone, knows him as John's younger brother, but he kind of got in. I think he won a WAF world title. I think he won a Golden Bear, did what he did, got out of it. I knew, I think John even said he was more into motocross. That was his thing. So, but for that short period of time, he had some success, and, it'd be kind of cool to ever kind of sit down and talk with him, but he's probably doesn't, I don't know. It just seemed like he did what he had to do, left. All right, it's been fun, but now I'm off to do something else. And that's pretty much how it went down like that with him.
Yeah, I mean, and that sounds like a typical Utah arm wrestler. They're all very nice. They're all very laid back. Like I said, I met him at a wedding. I knew him, but we sat and talked at a wedding reception for a while, and it was just not real in-depth arm wrestling talk. It was just a general talk about two guys who knew each other but didn't know each other real well. I will tell you something about Utah though. It would be worth going. You should take your little show and go there. Go there on 4th of July. If Kevin Bongard is still running his arm wrestling tournament in Liberty, Utah on 4th of July. Liberty, Utah is this tiny little town up by where Kevin Bongard lives.
Right.
But because of John and Bill and Bob Brown and now Jordan Sill and Justin Green and Cody Merritt and all those others, there is a level of arm wrestling knowledge in that state which is amazing to see when you come from another state. I entered my kids in this 4th of July. What you were going to win was like a gift certificate or something. And this 4th of July festival has the contests where some people have to go catch a pig that's all covered with grease, and they got a pond set up, and they throw this whole like cowboy, redneck type stuff. But Kevin Bongard throws this arm wrestling tournament on, and there's no weight classes. As you sign up, he looks at you and just like puts you in categories. And I was there. I went to that tournament 3 years in a row, and the same pregnant woman won it 3 times in a row. But these high school kids would show up, and they're all top rolling, and they're shoulder pressing, and it's like all these, these like 16 and 18-year-old kids know all these arm wrestling moves. And it's because there are so many good arm wrestlers from Utah. You see arm wrestling pictures in most of the bars you go around. If you go between where Kevin lives and Bob Brown lives, there's arm wrestling pictures in bars and restaurants and arm wrestling tournaments everywhere. You hit that rainbow bar, and it's like what's the Kazakhstan guy's name? Angabarev?
Babaya, or I can't pronounce that name.
What he's doing in Kazakhstan, Bob Brown and the Brzinks and Bongards and all them already did in Utah. All right, there is a genetic knowledge of arm wrestling in the state of Utah. If you are born in Utah, you are 3 years ahead of the rest of the world in arm wrestling on your first birthday. There's that many people that know arm wrestling in that state. It's quite something to see.
Just to sit there, have a beer or 4, and have some good food. And
4 beers? We have 4 beers driving to breakfast.
Just to sit there and like listen, because I'm one of these guys that like all I want to do is listen to you guys talk and just pick up and just you could probably learn a lot. Bring a notepad, a pencil, or one of those Trapper Keeper them school notebooks. Bring it there.
Or just hit record on your podcast and interview Bob Brown.
Yeah. And it's just, not only that, but there's some old videos. I don't know if it was on Bob Brown's old channel, whoever, but or it might have been when Allison might have filmed some stuff, and there was like a episode and you and Bob and John were in the kitchen debating over something, and all you guys had good points, and it was just like funny because it's like it wasn't like any one of you was wrong, but all you guys were right. But you were right about, in a sense, but it was just different because you had different.
I think that was the precursor to the tabletop arm wrestling championship of the world. But yeah, me, Bob, and John, and then when we got to Arizona, Eric Wolfman, we would have these knockdown, drag out 2-hour arguments over topics. I'll be honest. I think they were so trivial. I think I think I know what it was. I'm just not going to tell you because I think it's so silly. But yeah, that was fun. That was a lot of fun. Allie got a lot of good video from back then. Those were fun days.
Well, it was so funny because the tone of you guys' voice was so, like the way you would say things, the way, John would sit there and throw his hands up. Bob would like. You could tell Bob was into it because his glasses started to fall off, and then he used that pointer finger to put them back on. And, it's just like to make their point. And it was a true statement, and you were so invested. It made everybody believe it. It was just like, can you imagine if you were to go to a practice or just to get together, just sit there and listen, and you can walk out of there with a PhD in the sport,
Well, yeah, you got an argument between 4 or 5 guys who've been weight training and watching their diet for years on the exact very topic they all disagree on.
Right.
And this is what I'm saying. Unlike football, baseball, weightlifting, we do not have the fundamental unified theory of arm wrestling agreed upon. We do not agree. Table time versus weight training.
Right.
Time off before a competition. Cardio, no cardio. This stuff is all sorted out for other sports.
Yeah.
We don't have it sorted out for arm wrestling. And because of that, you have let's just grab two people that I'm not personally invested in. Let's grab Michael Todd and Devin Lorette. Screw it. Throw Dave Chafee and Jerry Cadret in there.
Right.
Okay. So that's basically the elite. That's basically our North America elite super heavyweights.
Agreed.
Right? 4 different body types, 4 completely different philosophies.
Yeah.
Right? And who's best between that 4? I mean, to be honest, if you match those 4 up 4 times in 1 year, it would be very hard to predict who would come out on top.
Yes.
I mean, you might have you can make arguments for one or the other, but to be honest, it's not like one of them is so far above the other one. Those people are probably all within less than 10% of each other, and those 4 people are probably 10 to 20% above the next tier below them.
I'd agree.
So if you got that kind of diversity in physique, nutrition, training, philosophy, we have not figured out the proper formula for arm wrestling yet. What that shows is it's anybody can do good. It's almost a coin toss, where if you look at other sports, you can pretty much pick the quarterback out of an NFL team nowadays. There's a few oddballs out there, but pitchers, quarterbacks, line, you know what I'm saying? We've got our other sports are dialed in. Our Olympic athletes, you know what a sprinter looks like versus a swimmer. But in arm wrestling, Jesus, just about anybody can be good, which is nice. I mean, I like that whole, follow your dreams, work hard stuff. It just means that we don't have things dialed in yet. You're going to buy a family car.
Mm-hmm.
All right. If you choose, I want a 4-door economy, a 4-door good gas mileage car, or a minivan. So those are basically your choices. But if you pick the 4-door car, the Honda Civic, the Toyota Camry, whatever Kia makes, whatever, they all basically look the same. That formula's been figured out. All right. That little 1.5 liter, 6-speed automatic transmission, 4-door cars figured out. Those minivans. You pull those chrome badges off that minivan, you can't tell who made it. You can't tell who made that little 4-door sedan. You go to an arm wrestling tournament, you really don't know who's going to win by looking at it. It looks like the freaking bar scene in the first Star Wars movie, and everybody's got a chance to win.
Well, I mean, and that's the beauty, because if I'm a new arm wrestler, now the latest and greatest are these seminars, and you're trying to figure out what kind of style do I want to go. You can go to your seminar, a Travis Bage's seminar, a Michael Todd seminar, what have you. You guys approach the game differently, different styles, but at some point, one of you 3 are going to say something that's going to go, I can do that. And then you kind of gravitate toward that person. So, I mean, it is good in a way that we all kind of have those options, because, if we all pulled the same way, we'd be a bunch of androids, where, okay, now it's just,
But an android would be the most efficient way to arm wrestle.
Yeah, that's true.
Right. So, and that's what I tried to, because the last seminar I gave was at an event Travis ran. So I gave a seminar, Travis did, and then Paul Lynn and Michelle Dugan gave one.
Yeah.
And I told my people, I said, look, you're going to hear different stuff from all of those people. And if you are a Travis-style puller, the stuff I'm going to tell you, not only does it probably not make sense, it's probably not going to help you.
Yeah.
You almost have to, you don't want to seek out the best arm wrestler in the world to coach you. You need to find somebody who arm wrestles like you're going to arm wrestle to coach you.
Exactly. Because right now, I can say the one thing I like to do more training wise is hand grippers. I know you don't like to do that. I know Artem's got on my case about that, but but it's one of those things that for me, I understand when you close it, your wrist is backwards. I totally understand that. I do it every day, but I think for just hand strengthening, I don't do it because, it's going to help me with a certain style or technique or anything. I mean, I get all that,
Wait a second. In my seminar, I say I do not train hand grippers for those reasons you stated.
Right.
But I repeatedly through my seminars say all strength is good. So if you're getting stronger in something, that's good. So keep doing it.
Right.
The only thing you got to trade off is when it comes to training, because if you put in the work, training should improve you.
Yes.
All right. But the things you got to juggle is, are you improving fast enough? And are you improving the right things? Okay.
Exactly.
If you're pushing your hand gripper strength way the fuck up, but your elbow's weak, strengthening your hand ain't going to help you.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? You can have the strongest hand in the world and a glass elbow, and you will get pinned with full hand control and position. That's what I preach.
Yes. And I agree with, and that's the thing, like you could sit there and be the, if I were to sit there and just work muscle in the gym and I'm getting stronger, that's good. But if you don't know how to apply that strength on the table, it ain't going to mean a damn thing,
That's exactly right. All strength is good, but, some's better. Some strength's better than other strengths.
Right.
And the best strength for you is what you're currently weak in.
Yeah. And, once people have that formula, once they go back, I don't know, like for me, if I go to a tournament or a super match and I lose, I got to go, okay, why did I lose? What did I lose on? Like I'm going back. Is it my foot placement? Is it my elbow placement or whatever? I break things down like that. I used to be a football coach, so I'm used to breaking things down, and I try to fix that so that way the next time it won't happen again unless somebody is that much more stronger than I am. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean. It's a good feeling if you go in and nobody's that much stronger than you.
Oh, yeah. But I think,
so start there. First, start going into tournaments where nobody is stronger than you. Then worry about your elbow placement. That's how I would coach you if you were my kid.
Right. That's awesome, and like I said.
But John would coach you exactly what you're doing. He'd say, you'll get stronger eventually, but work on elbow play. Now, actually, John, not so much. But like Devin and Ryan and those people are all into like micro positioning and working the refs and trying to like find a legal loophole into your victory and stuff. John's philosophy is what? Man, I'm gonna have to get back to you. You know what? I am going to quantify John's philosophy as I see it based over the 10 years I've known him.
Okay.
Because you could ask him, you know what, you give me a month or two, and then you should put me and John on, and me and John will have a debate on what John's philosophy on arm wrestling is. And I think he's going to be wrong.
If I can pull that off and get him available if he's not traveling the world, oh my Lord, just to sit there and have you guys go at it and kind of go, it's like a tennis match, and it's like, okay.
Because John would go, this is what I think. And I go, no, it ain't. That's absolutely not what you think. This is what you think.
There we go.
And John would go, wait a minute. It's about what I think. I automatically win. And I go, no, I don't think it works that way. This is what the body of evidence shows.
That would be so awesome, because then it'll take you be like, oh, I could be that fly on the wall in that kitchen that one day where all you guys were drinking beers and discussing stuff, and everybody was, very invested in what they were in the topic you guys were talking about. So that'd be straight awesome. So I'll have to do that.
Knowing up front, me and John are at opposite ends. We are diametrically opposed on how we approach the sport. I mean, I studied John from his website, blog, or whatever that was called. But yeah, we are diametrically opposed. But I'm going to tell you what, man, he's the only truly professional arm wrestler I've ever met who actually approached it as a profession.
Right.
There's a lot of people who make money in arm wrestling, but they're not trying to be a professional arm wrestler. They're more trying to be a marketing guy who does arm wrestling events, or they're trying to be a fundraiser guy.
Right.
Related to arm wrestling, or they're trying to be advertising or event planning or something like that. John boiled arm wrestling down to a profession, with like I mean, I don't think he does this, but I imagine he has like P&L statements and quarterly reports and shareholder meetings. I mean, there really should be a John Brzezinski Incorporated that's like on the stock exchange with shareholders and stuff.
Right.
Because the way he approaches it is, I mean, it completely colored how I approached it. So even though I was just a few years in and had like no gravitas whatsoever in the sport, I would turn down matches and tournaments and stuff. I go, no, because I'm not going to make any money there. And people say, well, fuck, you ain't making money anyways. That's beside the point. Right. I'm not making money anyways, and I'm not making, but I'm going to choose where I'm not making money.
Well, there you go. Well, I'll tell you what, we've been on for about an hour, and I want to really thank you for setting aside some time for to be on the show, because you're funny, and it's like you talk knowledge. It's like real comfortable water cooler talk with you, and I appreciate that.
It's a pleasure, man. I'll come back anytime you invite me.
Okay.
And if my channel kicks off, I'll have you on my channel, except I can't be at my house because evidently my internet connection is so horribly bad I can't do live streaming.
Well, you just let me know, and I would be glad to come on there, and we can chop it up some more.
All right. Where's the next tournament you're going to?
It's funny you bring that up. I'm going to the Fallen Heroes tournament in Kansas City. I have a match with Roger Learn.
Jackson, what you said, Jackson City?
Kansas City, Missouri.
Oh, Kansas City.
Yeah.
Kansas City, Missouri. That Roger Bailey Learn pulls a lot.
Yes.
It seems like he's pulling a tournament every freaking weekend.
That's what it feels like. I got to really, put my ducks in a row. I know Cody Merritt will be there.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you got like almost no chance against. I mean, I love you. Don't get me wrong. But that Roger is so effing strong. I mean, dude, that seminar I did at Travis's event,
yeah, we did
a 1 rep max on when people would come to mine. We did a 1 rep max, and Roger he was like in the first group and set the 1 rep max. The next 2 or 3 groups didn't come close to him, but nobody else had. When Roger did it, he did it first group, so there wasn't a target.
Right.
And he set the PR. The next 2 or 3 groups, nobody came close. Somebody came back. Somebody came up, and Roger kept coming in and checking on his record. He was supposed to be over at the freaking whatever Travis was teaching, the philosophy of arm wrestling. I don't know. He was supposed to be in the other, but he kept coming in to peek on who was doing good.
Right.
And somebody either tied or beat his PR. He came back and then set another one just to beat that guy.
And that's the competitor I'm going against.
That guy has got some kind of deep, brute, nitrous fired horsepower. I have no idea how much power that guy has if he gets into position, but I bet you he's got like scary power.
He is scary, and it worries me. So I may have to, go into my bag of tricks, because
you might have to start squeezing 2 hand grippers in one hand.
I know, because
I don't. If you have never pulled this guy, you are underestimating how strong he is. That guy is freaking strong. I mean, because we weren't set up. They told me they were going to have equipment and everything else, and I got there, and they don't have nothing. So I got these guys pulling on some bad hillbilly equipment, and it kind of hurt. So the numbers were all low because it put a lot of stress on people's elbow. I could tell it was bothering because the numbers really weren't that high.
Right.
I mean, I think we were 1 rep maxing in the 80, 90 pound range, and professional arm wrestlers are going to lift 100 pounds pretty much any way you can.
Right.
And I mean, yeah, there's those type of dogs that are trained they train them for fighting so they don't feel pain. I don't think Roger Bailey Learn has any freaking pain receptors in his body. You know what I'm saying? He's one of those guys you could probably shoot with a tranquilizer dart and then hit with a car, and then the National Geographic people would still say, yeah, I'm not tagging that guy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I gripped up with him back in March in Texas, and It was just after pull. So I mean, I don't know how much you want to, read into that, but it was right-handed. Our match was left-handed, but strong guy.
Oh, left-handed.
Yeah.
Oh, nobody cares. Yeah, you could win. The only time somebody cares about a left-handed match is if you beat Travis.
That's true.
I take back everything I
said. Well, sweet, Todd. I'm gonna let you go for the evening, man. But thank you. Awesome to meet, have you on my show, and we will talk soon, my friend.
One more question.
Yes, sir.
Who wins between me and Corey?
Ooh, good.
And when Corey asked, what did you tell him?
Oh, I told Corey that I think if his head's on straight, that he would get the W.
Oh, and you're telling me that too, that Corey wins?
I'm gonna say, is this a 6th round or best of 5?
I think it's best of 5.
Best of 5?
I should know that, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
Hell, you should know it. You're the host. What are you asking? I'll be asking the questions from now on.
Well, yeah, you were calling him Corey Miller at one of your shows. You were so.
Wait a second. Wait, I do not want to pull Corey Miller. I pulled Corey Miller, man. I can't touch him. Corey Miller lit me up like Christmas. When I pulled Corey Miller, he lit me up like Christmas, man. I'm telling you, man, I will not pull Corey Miller ever.
It's so fast and painless. It's like you blink and it's already gone. And it's like
he pushed a button and my arm disengaged. It's like the whole transmission went neutral. I have no idea what he's got some kind of voodoo going on. I have no idea what he's doing.
Must be a Wyoming thing.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you later.
All right, man. Have a good evening. Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye. That was Todzilla, and I'm telling you right now, that was probably one of the most funniest shows I've ever had because he makes arm wrestling fun to talk about. I mean, he talks about his experiences, what he thinks, his logic, and all that kind of stuff, and the way he says things is just funny. He's another guy that I just want to share a 6-pack and just hear him talk about all the stories and all the adventures he's had, So awesome, real guy. I will make it a point to have him back on the show again. And there you go. So everyone in the chat, thank you for joining me today on the show. It is Thursday. I'm going to get a bite to eat. But as always, next time, I will see you when I see you. Y'all take care. I'm going to try to look for another guest. Take care, y'all.